you're not doing these things ahead of your FPL Game Week 30 wildcard or your wildcard beyond Game Week 30 and your transfers in, then I'm getting quite worried for you. We're going to be going through players that are very important to be transferring in, the teams that we need to be targeting, the individual players, how many players we need from each team, and everything around the double and blank game weeks coming up, chip strategy, the absolute lot. So if you're an FPL fan and you're not subscribed to this channel, do hit subscribe down below. We do daily FPL content helping you out, and if you want to get the highest rank before the end of the season, then hit subscribe on this channel and drop a like while you're down there as well. I just want to start off by talking about the Nottingham Forest and Brighton situation in the FA Cup. So Nottingham Forest did beat Brighton in the FA Cup, which does mean we were expecting them to double in Game Week 33, but they actually play 2 matches in Game Week 33 and Game Week 35, both on the Monday night, which means that a midweek fixture wouldn't be able to be arranged in Game Week 33. So there'll be no double game week for Nottingham Forest in Game Week 33. It could potentially go to a double game week in 36, but we do actually expect it to be actually put in to the blank Game Week 34, meaning that Nottingham Forest, even though they won in the FA Cup, will not be blanking in Game Week 33. So we're not going to be discussing any Nottingham Forest assets because they will not be doubling in Game Week 33 as we expect right now. Now, a team that you just simply have to be targeting is Crystal Palace. They have back-to-back double game weeks most likely. These aren't absolutely confirmed yet. They'll get confirmed in Game Week 31, the double game weeks going forward. But we know in Game Week 32, Crystal Palace do already double. And we do expect this double game week to get put in at Game Week 33, as we've said. As I've said for a long time now on this channel. So there's quite a lot of Crystal Palace assets that I like the look of. And if they are going to get back-to-back doubles, which we expect, realistically, a triple up has just got to be done. Now, it depends on which way you want to go about this. You've got good defensive options for Crystal Palace who've been very solid defensively pretty much since November. And going forward as well, you've got options that are doing really well, like the likes of Ismail Assar, Abera Eze, and then Mateta as well. You've got a lot of players in there. And defensively, for me, the top 2 options are Dean Henderson in goal, which we're going to discuss a bit more the goalkeeper situation and what you're going to be doing on your wildcard or transfers in, and who the best goalkeeper is going forward. We'll discuss that a little bit more in detail later. But as I say, then Daniel Munoz defensively, he's got them attacking returns going forward as well. He's so good going forward and such a great player to watch as well. And he also gets them clean sheets as well. As I say, Pals are very decent defensively. So we'll just start off by discussing Dean Henderson. Now, we're going to be discussing a few more goalkeepers later on in the video and which one you can choose. Dean Henderson is 100% an option for one of these goalkeepers. Is he the strongest option out of the keepers? Potentially, but then is there better Palace options? Probably yes as well. So is Dean Henderson viable? As I say, absolutely, but as I say, I do think there is better options for Crystal Palace personally, but I don't mind the Dean Henderson. If you want to go for double Crystal Palace defence, my combination would be Dean Henderson and then Daniel Munoz. But as I say, we're going to be discussing a few more keepers later on in this video who might be a little bit more appealing just based on the other options in that side, but I don't mind Dean Henderson. Now, Daniel Munoz for me has to just be a lock-in in your side. Realistically, as I said, he's so good going forward. He's Crystal Palace's best defender in terms of an FPL asset. There's also a few other Palace defenders who maybe go for, but they just quite simply don't have the same attacking threat as Daniel Munoz. Don't really need to discuss that one too much. For me, Daniel Munoz just has to be in your wildcard team for me personally. Then we've got Ismail Assar and Abera Eze. Now, for me, I'd only be choosing one of these two. It depends on the structure of your team, how much budget you have, who else you're going to be bringing in your wildcard team. We're going to be discussing a wildcard team later on. And to be honest, they're both great options. Now, Ismail Assar is about $1 million cheaper than Eze. Eze has actually been in great form recently. He did score a goal for England. He got a goal and assist as well in the FA Cup for Crystal Palace in that game against Fulham. But Ismail Assar did also score in that game. Eze did set up Sarr for his goal. So both looking like great options. For me, I said it yesterday, I do think Abera Eze is just slightly the better option for me personally. But that's not to say that Sarr's a bad option. I think they're both fantastic options. So it's whoever you feel like is better, and how you, as I say, the structure of your team, how much budget you have. If you need to save the money, then I'd probably just go down from Eze to Sarr. But if you have the extra funds, I will personally be going for Eze. I do think I prefer Eze over the next few weeks, just with the form that he's in, and we've seen how good Eze's been for years now in the Premier League. He's such a good player to watch, and as I say, he's starting to get them attacking contributions again like he was doing in previous seasons, so hopefully he can keep that run of form going. And as I say, Crystal Palace with the fixtures coming up, you can see there, back-to-back doubles potential, and then that game against Southampton in Game Week 30 is just so tempting to have a triple up on Crystal Palace on your wildcard. It's just that alone is a big reason for wildcarding in Game Week 30. Having that Crystal Palace triple up, which most people probably don't have who aren't on a wildcard, because realistically most people in blank Game Week 29 did get rid of their Crystal Palace assets. So in Game Week 30 you are kind of ahead of the curve in terms of Crystal Palace assets for the best fixture, which is Southampton, because Southampton are quite literally the whipping boys of the Premier League. Now, going on to Mateta, who's obviously had that bad injury against Millwall that he picked up. He has been fit for the game against Fulham. He played in that game, didn't get any contributions, but he does look like a great option going forward. Now, it depends on what are the 3 best options. Now, I've already said I will personally be going for one Crystal Palace defender. I will be going for Daniel Munoz. Then I will be going for one of the midfielders in Ismail Sarr. Honestly, it is a bit of a coin flip. There's not a lot between them. And I would actually be choosing Mateta. Now, as I say, it depends on the structure of your team. You might want to go for a double Palace defence because you might want, some players we want to discuss later on in the forward line, you might want to go for instead of Mateta. But for me personally, I will be going for one defender, one midfielder, and one forward from Crystal Palace. And Mateta will, of course, be the forward. For me, Eze would be the midfielder, and Daniel Munoz for me then would be the defender. Now, we also want to discuss the Arsenal assets, because Arsenal are very likely now to double game week in game week 33, which is a very favourable double in 33, which will be against Ipswich and Crystal Palace. Of course, this double game week isn't absolutely confirmed. We'll probably get confirmed in game week 31, as I say, but the likelihood is this double game week will get put in game week 33. And if you look at that double game week for Arsenal, it's probably the best double game week out of any of the teams that have got a double. And with Arsenal being pretty much the second best team in the league as well, you've got an opportunity to get some serious points and an opportunity for an Arsenal triple up. As it says on that tweet there, it says an Arsenal triple up is pretty much a no-brainer. And as I say, with the double game week, as I say, it very much is a no-brainer at this point. Now, for me, I would be going for 2 Arsenal defenders. Now, it depends on which ones you want to go for. As I said, I discussed Henderson before. You can go for Henderson for Crystal Palace, but then there's David Raya for Arsenal. Now, if I'm looking at Arsenal assets in terms of how good they are for getting points over the course of the season, how reliable they are to start, of course, David Raya is absolutely nailed on being a goalkeeper, and he does get a couple of saving points here and there. He's got a lot of clean sheets. Arsenal defensively are the best in the whole of the Premier League statistically this season in terms of XG conceded, and they've been very consistent and put up decent numbers defensively in terms of clean sheet numbers as well over the course of this season. So David Raya, for me, I think in a wildcard is an absolute lock-in at this point. As I say, I like Henderson, but David Raya just has to be a lock-in my opinion, just because the sheer lack of Arsenal assets beyond these players on screen is quite concerning. You've got Gabriel, of course, who's got that attacking threat. He hasn't scored a goal in a while, to be fair, but we do know how good that Gabriel can be from corners, and he can get them 15 pointers with a clean sheet, a goal, and all 3 bonus points. So for me, Gabriel and Raya are pretty much lock-ins into my wildcard team. I just really can't see any other choice other than those 2 defensively for me personally. You can go for Timber if you want. I'm not sure if he's quite as nailed as a Gabriel, of course, but Timber's been pretty good going forward in recent weeks. And to be fair, probably over the last, maybe 15 game weeks, he's probably got more points than Gabriel, or probably got more points per match or points per 90 than Gabriel. But Gabriel got that nailed on factor, and as well as that, he's very good from set pieces as well, although, as I say, he hasn't shown it in recent weeks. Now, I want to discuss Bukayo Saka now. He's recently come back into training. He's obviously had a long-term injury. He's not going to get rushed back into anything. Arsenal are also still in the Champions League as well. We don't know how far they're going to be going in the Champions League. Obviously, they've got a tough game in the Champions League up next, but you never know. If they keep going in the Champions League, that is going to be their priority. They're pretty much nailed on for Champions League at this point, and they're obviously never going to win the title. So, Bukayo Saka, in terms of his minutes, I don't think it's going to be absolutely perfect just due to them reasons that I just said. But if he can get fit and firing for double game week 33, I think as a transfer in later on down the line, as I say, it's just kind of a wait and see with Saka. I wouldn't put him in your wildcard team. But as a transfer in, save a couple of transfers, if you can find a way to move to Bukayo Saka, if he's back in the side and firing again for Arsenal, he could be a big differential, and he could be an amazing asset, because we've seen how good Saka's been. He's an absolute assist king, chips in with goals as well, in a very good Arsenal team, and as I say, that has a very favourable double game week. So if I was on a wild card and I'm looking at Arsenal assets, I'd probably be just doubling up on the Arsenal defence in going for David Raya and Gabriel, because the fixtures aren't too bad. But then beyond, then just think about it beyond that, and then maybe just transfer in a third Arsenal asset. Because who else really is there going forward as Arsenal? It's a really strong asset. Erdegaard's alright. I wouldn't be going anywhere near like a Marino, a Martinelli, whoever else there even is. I wouldn't even be looking at them. Erdegaard's the one that I'd maybe consider. But as I say, he's just not done enough over the course of the season. He's not got enough returns for me to even consider him until game week 33, until that double game week gets locked in for Arsenal. So if I was on a wild card in game week 30, or I'm looking at transfers in, or I'm on a wild card in 31, I'd probably just be going for 2 Arsenal players, and that for me would be Gabriel and it would be David Raya. Now I want to discuss Newcastle as well, because we know that they double in game week 32. They have a lot of good options, Newcastle doing. They got a good run of fixtures all around that double game week as well. And they got a favourable double game week in 32 against Man United and against Crystal Palace, of course, in that game where Crystal Palace also do double as well. Now, for me, Alexander Isak's just got to be a lock into your team no matter what. He is going to be everybody's captain choice for game week 32, just because he's got the favourable fixtures. Other than that, Crystal Palace double game week is a lot tougher than Newcastle's, and at the end of the day, Alexander Isak has been an absolute joke over the course of this season and the last few years now for Newcastle. So for me, Alexander Isak just has to be your captain option in game week 32. Therefore, if I'm wildcarding in 30, if I'm wildcarding in 31, if I've not got a wildcard and I'm looking to transfer somebody in, Alexander Isak would be absolutely at the top of that list. Because just think about it, in game week 32, if he does well in 32 and you don't own him or you've not got him as your captain, you're going to be in quite a bit of trouble and it's going to be a pretty big red arrow. So Alexander Isak has to be a lock-in in your team personally. Now, I would actually be going for a triple up on Newcastle ahead of that double game week 32. So as I say, Alexander Isak for me is an absolute lock-in right there. We also have Nick Pope on screen as well, but I wouldn't really be going near him just due to the fact now that we have David Raya. But if you wanted to go for maybe a bench boost in a 32, you could maybe go for something like that. But I wouldn't really be looking at Nick Pope just due to the fact now we've got David Raya, who should have a double game week in game week 33. As far as midfielders go, it's a battle between Jacob Murphy and Anthony Gordon. Again, it is quite team dependent, depending on the kind of budget of your team. If I had to choose, of course, it's going to be Anthony Gordon. I'm going to be looking to get Anthony Gordon in my team, but he is suspended for game week 30, so do note that. But then beyond that, he'll be back in the Newcastle team, and he's got a good run of games. You look at that game week 31 game as well before that against Leicester. I mean, Isak's a genuine captain contender against Leicester as well, because Leicester are just so bad. But as I say, Jacob Murphy and Anthony Gordon, for me, it's quite simply Anthony Gordon. I don't care if he's out for game week 30. If you're on a wild card in 30, I'd still go for Anthony Gordon. If you're on a wild card in game week 31, I'd certainly be going for Anthony Gordon over Jacob Murphy. That's not to say Jacob Murphy's a bad option. If you don't have the funds, then I don't absolutely hate the option of Jacob Murphy. But I just prefer the attacking output, and the more I've just got more confidence in an Anthony Gordon than I do over a Jacob Murphy. He's the kind of guy that beyond the game week 32, I'd be benching him every week. I just wouldn't be starting him. So for me, Anthony Gordon's just like one that you'd want to have and you'd want to start every single week. So for me, I'd rather go Anthony Gordon. But if you wanted to go for Jacob Murphy, then fair enough. As far as defensively for Newcastle now, there's some decent options. Dan Burns, very good value, and he's nailed on 90 minutes. There's also Livramento, who's with the Lewis Hall's injury, Livramento can play right back and left back, so that's going to boost his minutes a bit more. But he's not absolutely nailed for them full 90 minutes. There's also Kieran Trippier that I'm seeing is getting a lot of hype and getting a lot of love right now. But for me, I'd rather just go cheap, to be honest, and just go for Dan Burn. We know he's going to double in 32. We know that he's a 90-minute man pretty much every single week as well. So for me, it's not a big debate. I think I'd rather go for Dan Burn. If you want to take a punt on Kieran Trippier, I don't really know about his minutes 100%. Obviously, he is getting on a bit now, but with Newcastle having injuries in the fullback areas to Lewis Hall, obviously that boosts Trippier's minutes. But for me, I'd just go for Dan Burn personally, just for the nailed on 90 minutes. And he has got an attacking threat as well from set pieces. So for me, defensively for Newcastle, I'd be going for one defender in Dan Burn personally. I'd be going for one midfielder in Anthony Gordon. And then my forward, of course, would be Alexander Isak. So those would be the three Newcastle players that I'd be looking at personally. I want to discuss Man City as well, because Man City are a very interesting team that have some very good assets going forward. And with the double game week potentially in game week 33. At the time of recording this video, and at the time you might be seeing this or you might be seeing it after, I do expect Man City to double in game week 33, because Aston Villa and Man City are both in the FA Cup, and it only takes one of those teams to win out of Man City against Bournemouth and then Aston Villa against Preston for Man City to get a double game week. So if you're watching this after, hopefully Man City have got a double game week, and this video still this part of the video is still of value to you, and I do expect it to be, by the way. So so as I say, for Man City, there's three standout options for me. Defensively, it's Guardiola. Obviously very good going forward. He gets quite a lot of attacking contributions, scores a lot of goals, and good fixtures coming up with that double game week potential in game week 33. Does look absolutely insane, to be honest. So Guardiola could be one of the top defenders to and a big differential as well, by the way. Now, midfielders wise for City, I'm just not a fan. I'm not a fan of anybody in that position, to be honest, in terms of nailed on for minutes. I don't know what you're going to get. So I would steer well clear for me personally. Now, Erling Haaland's got he's a great captaincy option in game week 30. Him and Mo Salah are very good options. And then you're looking at it, if you get a double game week in 33, going without Erling Haaland is going to be very risky, because he will be the number one captain in game week 33 if Man City do go on to double. And then as well as that, you've got marmoush as well. So as I was saying before with the kind of strike situation, if you wanted to go for a Mateta, then you would have to miss out on a Haaland or marmoush. Now, if you wanted to avoid Mateta and then go for two Crystal Palace midfielders or two Crystal Palace defenders, you can then maybe go for a double up on the Man City strikers in Erling Haaland and Omar Marmoush. So that's up to you. But as far as Man City assets go, I really like Guardiola. Haaland's very good, of course, as well, just for that captaincy in game week 33 if he does double in that game week. And then Marmoush as well is a bit of a differential as well. I do quite like the look of that. And other than that, I'm not really sure who else I'll be going for in terms of a triple up on Man City. And in game week 33, if it's a double game week against Everton away and Aston Villa at home, you'd probably want to be having a Man City triple. I know they have been terrible this season, but you still probably want to have a triple up on the Man City assets. And as far as the 3 players that I would choose for Man City, it would be Gvardiol, it would be Haaland, and it would be marmoush. So those would be the 3 that I would be choosing if I was on a wild card and if I wanted to get the 3 Man City players. As for Aston Villa assets, I want to discuss Villa because they're a team that's not really been talked about enough in my opinion. But the problem is with Aston Villa, they do have Champions League fixtures around these kind of fixtures as well. So that's something that you've got to be aware of. That there is a lot of fixtures coming up for Aston Villa. So are they going to be absolutely nailed on for minutes, these assets? I'm not 100% sure. Ollie Watkins has got a slight knock at the moment as well. So there's options for Aston Villa. I do like the more forward options. Defensively, Aston Villa just haven't been good enough over the course of the season for me to really consider them properly. So Marco Asensio has been unbelievable since signing for Aston Villa so far. Obviously, Aston Villa, they're still in the FA Cup, of course. If they win that game against Preston, they've got fixture congestion there. They've also got the Champions League game, so you have got to take all that into consideration, that around these fixtures, all this group of fixtures, Aston Villa do have a lot of players that could get rotated in the side. So, as I say, Asensio has been very good when he's got the minutes, and when he's played, he's been very impressive. So, definitely one to keep an eye on. As for, again, keep an eye on how they play against Preston as well. Obviously, I don't know at the time of recording. And then there's Morgan Rogers as well, great option, but his minutes might get slightly managed now, as I say, with Rashford signing, with Asensio signing, with the fixture congestion. He's not going to be a 90-minute man like he was in the first half of the season, but he's still a very good option going forward. And Ollie Watkins is a difficult one just because there's so many other good forwards, so I'll probably be steering clear of Watkins just because I simply just prefer Isak, I prefer marmoush, I prefer Erling Haaland, and I prefer Mateta as well. So that's like a lot of strikers. Like Watkins will probably be my 5th choice striker if he's fully fit. So I'll be looking at a Villa midfielder, either Rogers or Asensio, as maybe a bit of a differential shout. As I say, see how they get on and see how this double game is going to pan out. But I do think he has a differential. Aston Villa midfielders could be a very good way to go. That will about do for the video. If it helped you out, please do drop a like down below. Subscribe to the channel. If you've watched to this point, you may as well hit subscribe on the channel. It'd be very greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.